Okay, hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. So for today's session, we are going to be talking about this week's breaking news and setups. I can still see a bunch of you guys coming in, so we'll give about 1 more minute to let more people join our session. In the meantime, you can let me know in the chat if you guys have any requests for any charts that you'd like me to go through. And yeah, we will get started in about 1 more minute. Thanks everyone. So as per usual, a disclaimer and risk warning, this information is not considered as investment advice or investment recommendation, but instead a marketing communication. IronFX is our products are traded on margin and carry a high level of risk, and it is possible to lose all your capital. These products may not be suitable for everyone, and you should ensure that you understand the risk involved. I'm Melanie, and I'll be your speaker for today. I'm an investment analyst at Rocket, who are finalists for Best FX and Equity Research in the years 2019 to 2021. Okay, so before we get started with our charts, let's go ahead and look at the economic events that are coming up for the rest of this week. So for today, I'm just using forexfactory.com. This is just the economic calendar that we like to use. Of course, you can use any others that you prefer. So for today, we have Australian employment data. We had the employment change and unemployment rate, which remained the same at 4.1%. We also had the UK GDP data. Month-on-month data went up to 0.2%, and preliminary GDP quarter-on-quarter data went up to 0.7%. We'll now be awaiting US core PPI data, retail sales data, unemployment claims, Empire State Manufacturing Index, and Philly Fed Manufacturing Index, as well as Fed Chair Powell will be speaking. And let's look at tomorrow as well. Okay, so tomorrow we have New Zealand's inflation expectations. We also have the Swiss National Bank chairman speaking, and the US preliminary UOM consumer sentiment and inflation expectations. So it's important to take note of these timings because these, especially for medium to high impact events, can create quite a bit of volatility in your charts. Okay, I just want to preface this before we start, but I'm having some issues with Zoom if you guys have been here for my previous webinars as well. So if it crashes halfway, I will come back and join the webinar again. So please do come back. I will try and come back as fast as I can, and I will just continue with where we left off. Okay. Okay, so I can see in the chat we have a couple of requests. So let's get started. We'll start off by looking at DXY. And I will look at, I think there was a request for gold. So we'll look at that after. Okay. I'm hoping that if I switch my camera off, it will be smoother a little bit. So let's get started. So I like to start by looking at the higher time frames so that we get an idea of the general direction of price. So you can see here on our weekly time frame, we have prices recently moving upwards. Now, if we look at our daily time frame, we see that pattern, or rather that trend as well, although there's been a recent downturn again. Okay, over here at this overlap level. So you can see that that prices have reacted off of it and a couple of times before. Okay, I'm gonna look at our 4-hour time frame for this. Okay, so again, looking at our 4-hour time frame, you can see prices generally moving in this uptrend. So I'm gonna start by placing our first resistance at this swing high here, and then pulling it back to this swing low here. Next, I'm going in with a first support and a second support just at this swing low here. Okay, and then if you want, you can also place your second resistance over here just to give you some more options. Okay, so now let's go in with our Fibonacci levels. So I'm starting with a retracement. You can see my 78 and the 61 both line up with my resistance levels. Okay, next I'm going in with another retracement. Let's take it from the swing high here. Okay, and you can see the um okay, I'm gonna keep the 38 as well as the 50%. Okay, you can see it doesn't really line up exactly with our resistance levels, but that's fine. Yeah, because we're looking for confluence areas more so than specific levels. Now, I'm gonna zoom in once again and see if we have any other levels in. We zoom in. Okay, my 127 and that 161.8 both line up. So what we're doing here is we are using a Fibonacci projection, which is just a lightning bolt kind of shape. Okay, and then I'm also going in with a Nike tick shape or Fibonacci extension. Okay, and you can see price has already broken out of that 161, so this is no longer valid. Okay, I think mm, okay, my 161 lines up here as well, so I'm just gonna keep that. And I think that's all the levels we have. Okay, so before we look at our indicators, I'm expecting prices to continue downwards towards our first support, but then reverse upwards. Okay, and this is purely technical. Okay, yeah, so I'm not taking into account any of our fundamentals when I say this. I'm just purely looking at our graphical analysis, our Fibonacci levels. So I am expecting prices to continue pushing upwards because here you see we have a confluence area which tends to attract price, but might not be able to push past it. So yeah, that's which explains why we saw this recent reversal. Okay, but as you can see here, overall prices are still moving in this uptrend. Okay, but yeah, make sure that you keep up with the latest updates and policies before deciding whether you're going in for buy or sell. Okay, but for now, I'm going in for a sell, or I can wait for price to reverse off that first support and then go in for a sell towards our first resistance. you can place a partial profit at your first resistance and then go in for a take profit to your second, or you can just have a take profit here at your first resistance and wait for price to break out before going in for another buy if you're being safe. Okay, having said that, let's look at our indicators. So I like to start off with Ichimoku and MACD because at one glance you can tell exactly what the signals are. Okay, MACD does support analysis. Ichimoku, however, does not. Okay, because price is moving above the cloud, which is giving us a bullish signal. Okay, so if we look at Bollinger Bands, you can see that prices have started moving below that middle band, this blue line here. So that is giving us a bit of a bearish signal, but it's not really giving us a clear trend, so I'm not going to use this for now. EMA, SMA, and SAW, you can see price is moving below all three of these indicators, so that does support our analysis. And lastly, I'm going to use our momentum indicators, namely the RSI and the stochastic. You can also use the TDI if you want, or the super trend, but these two are typically the ones that I like to compare with. Okay, so you can see on our stochastic, we have a hidden resistance level here. Okay, so over here and here. So basically what that means is that price has made a higher high, whereas on our stochastic, you can see it has remained at that resistance level. Okay, so typically when this happens, you can see it's happened before and prices dropped after that here as well. Okay, and similarly, we're expecting that same thing to happen right now, which it did. So we're expecting it to continue for a bit. Okay, especially since price hasn't reached its oversold region yet, which suggests that it still has room to continue moving downwards. Same for stochastic here. Okay, but I don't think that price is going to push below that first support. Okay, here our 61 lines up with the first support. 38.2 also lines up. Okay, so let me highlight this level. I'm expecting prices to reverse towards this level. Not reverse, to continue downwards to this level and then reverse off of it, bounce off of it. Okay, any questions so far? If not, let's move on. We'll next be looking at gold. Okay. So this was my previous analysis. I expected prices to reverse off. You can see how price followed exactly the arrow that I drew here, expecting prices to continue downwards. Okay, so the reason why we started with DXY and then look at gold is because DXY and gold typically are inversely correlated. Um, Not always, okay, but quite often that's the trend that we see. But again, not always. So earlier when we were observing or we were analyzing DXY, we were expecting price to continue downwards slightly and then continue upwards. So the overall trend will still be an overall bullish one. Now you can see just by looking at the chart, the overall trend is pretty bearish. But it looks like there's a recent bounce off of this level here. Okay, so it's basically similar. I mean, it's quite similar to what we analyzed previously in our DXY. Um, yeah. So if you look at the price comparison or the line chart here, which represents the DXY, there are some occasions where it's quite obvious. Yeah. So like for example here, DXY has a swing high here and gold gives us this swing low. So there are certain periods where the inverse correlation is very obvious, but other times it's not so clear. Okay, so that's why I say typically it is inversely correlated, but don't depend on it too much. Okay, so I'm gonna also analyze this on our 4-hour time frame. I think you guys prefer 4 hours as well. Okay, so I kind of want to place an intermediate level here, intermediate resistance, okay, because it's in line with 3 swing lows. And then for my first resistance, I will place it here. And a second support in case price breaks out of this level. Maybe just here. Okay, now going in with our retracement and extension levels. Okay, that's 78 lines up. Okay, the 61 is quite close to our first support. But price has already broken out of it here, so I don't really want to use this. Okay, and then I'm going in with a extension as well. 127 and 161 line up exactly in line with our support and resistance. Our two support levels here. So again, if you guys can't really see what the shape is, this method uses a Nike tick. In this case, it's inverted. So a normal Nike tick would just look like that. Okay, so this is an inverted Nike tick, and we're focused on the levels that are more than 100. So most often we use 127 and 161, but sometimes we might use the 143 as well. Okay, now I am using our projection levels, so that lightning bolt shape once again, and I have my 78, 100, and 127 lining up. Maybe not the 161. Okay, let me draw out the shape again. So this is the lightning bolt shape. Oops, ignore this. Okay, it's just basically like a zigzag flash kind of shape. And we're using this tool here, the one with 3 points. Okay, and I think we have one more retracement level here. Think our first resistance, yep, and the intermediate, so 23 and 50%, line up nicely. Okay. Now, so before we pull out our indicators again, my analysis is that price is going to continue moving upwards, like we see it bouncing off our first support already, bouncing off this intermediate, and then continuing in a downtrend. Especially because we see this intermediate resistance here, price has reacted off of it a couple of times. So, and it's quite recent as well. So we could see price reacting off of it once again. So for now, it's pretty bullish, and then we expect it to move in the bearish trend. So again, similar to before, you can go in for a buy now towards this intermediate resistance. It's quite a short, it's quite a short distance. Or you can wait for price to reverse off of it first and then go in for a sell to your first support. Or you could place a partial profit at your first support and a take profit at your second. So that's up to you what you choose to do. Okay, so now same thing. Price is moving below the Ichimoku cloud. MACD is giving us a very bearish signal here. And then I'm gonna look at Bollinger Bands. Okay, you can see prices pushing below this lower band here. So it's still giving us a pretty bearish signal, although there's been a slight bounce. So that's the reason why I'm expecting it to continue to push downwards. And then we look at our moving averages, EME, SME, and SA, and RSI and stochastic. So you can see prices moving below all three of those indicators as well. The dotted line is your parabolic saw, and these two lines are the EME and the SMA. Okay, RSI and stochastic, you can see they are also giving us I don't know if there is a descending trend line here. Not really, okay? Because for a valid trend line, you need at least 3 touches, which we don't have here. But you can see they are generally moving in a downtrend. Although they have recently bounced up from this hidden support level here. And also from the oversold regions. Okay, so we can see, so we are already seeing a little bit of a bounce up here. Okay, but not really for RSI. Okay. Any questions? No? Okay, next we'll look at natural gas. Actually, let's look at WTI first. Hey, here we have prices moving in a downtrend. Okay, this is on our weekly time frame. I think we also have prices moving in a descending trend line here. Now, if we look at our daily time frame, you can also see quite a bit of fluctuation here. So once again, as you would know, the markets are super volatile now. So when I'm analyzing this, I'm purely looking at our technicals. So the indicators and the Fibonacci lines, so on and so forth. I'm not really taking into account any of these um events or any of the announcements. Um yeah. So that's the reason why I go through the events with you guys first so that you can take note of those and yeah, take into account those when you are placing your orders. Okay, let's look at maybe let's do this on the daily time frame. Mm, okay, let's do it on the 4 hour as well. So my second support will just go here, and my first resistance up here at this swing high. Hey, now a Fibonacci retracement here shows us the 50% lines up nicely with the first resistance. Okay, 50% lines up as well. I'm gonna keep that 78 as well. Okay. And now I'm using the same Fibonacci projection. $61. Okay, I'm just gonna keep the 61. Let's maybe look at this projection as well. Okay, I might keep this 100%. Okay, I think that's all the Fibonacci levels we have here. So now I'm gonna pull out our indicators. Here I'm expecting prices to continue pushing downwards because you can see at our first resistance, it's not really a very significant level. There's only been one swing low here in the recent past. Um, okay, one swing low and one swing high. And there's only one Fibonacci retracement that lines up here. So it's not exactly a very strong confluence area. But let's look at our indicators and see what they tell us. So MACD is giving us a pretty bearish signal here. Ichimoku prices are still moving above the cloud, so it's not really supporting our analysis yet. Because I say yet because it does look like it's approaching the clouds. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of that for now. Let's look at our Bollinger Bands. Okay, you can see prices pushing below that lower band, that green line. Okay, so once again, that's also a bearish signal. EMA, SMA, SAR, RSI, and stochastic. Okay, prices are also moving below our EMA, SMA, and SAR here. RSI and stochastic. Stochastic is moving into the oversold regions here. Okay, so we could be seeing a bit of a bounce, but RSI is giving us a bearish trend, but it's not telling us that there's going to be that it's in the oversold region currently. Okay, so just keep an eye out for this for the stochastic. Okay, since it's in the oversold regions. Other than that, all the other indicators have given us a pretty strong bearish signal. Okay, so I'm expecting prices to continue to push below that first support towards our second support. Okay, and next we'll look at natural gas. Mm, okay, so using natural gas, or rather looking at natural gas, it's pretty volatile. There isn't really a clear trend here. Do you want to do this on the 4-hour or daily time frame? Mm, I think both charts are fine. Yep, okay, we can do this on the 4-hour time frame. Okay, so this is the first resistance here. I might add an intermediate resistance here. Okay. Mm, maybe here. Okay. Reason being it's in line with a couple swing lows and swing highs here. And then my first support will go maybe here. Okay, this is my first support, and you can already see prices kind of reversing a little bit off of that level. Yeah, I think I'll place the second support here. Okay, so now I'm going in again with a retracement for starters. Okay, nope, not up here. 78 lines up with the first resistance. And then I am going in with a projection. Yep. Hmm. Okay, I'm going in with another retracement here. So my 50% and the 38.2 both line up. I think that's all the levels we have actually. Maybe there's a Nike tick extension here. Mm, yeah, we can keep the 161. Okay, so the Nike tick shape is here in case you can't see it. It's just a small one here. And then I might go in with a projection. Yep, my 78.6 lines up. Other than that, I don't really see any other levels. Maybe a retracement here. Oops. Okay, 50% lines up with my intermediate resistance. But apart from that, that's it. Okay, now let's go in with our indicators. Okay, MACD is giving us a pretty bearish signal. You can see it in this transitionary stage on the Ichimoku, so I'm going to hide it for now. MACD is giving us a bearish signal. Okay, now let's look at our EMA, SMA, SA, RSI, stochastic. If you guys have any other indicators that you want me to use, that you guys normally use, you can let me know as well. Okay, and then RSI is giving us a pretty bearish signal. Stochastic is moving into the oversold regions once again. So this is similar to what we looked at before. Okay, but you see prices moving below all three of the moving average indicators as well. So that is also a bearish signal. So I'm expecting it to continue in this downtrend, but similar to before, there's always a possibility that it will reverse or it'll bounce off this first support slightly before continuing downwards. So you want to make sure that when you place your stop loss, which I guess in this case, your stop loss would just be this intermediate resistance. So if you're using this as your stop loss, you want to make sure that there's enough room for price to move since it is bouncing up. Okay, you want to make sure it bounces, there's enough room for it to bounce up and you don't get stopped out before it reverses back down. Okay. We still have some time, so do you guys have any other requests? I'm so surprised that my Zoom didn't crash this session. Okay, let's look at Bitcoin. Okay, so weekly time frame, you can see prices reversing off this swing high here. And it's currently testing this level as well. Okay, let's look at daily. Okay, let's analyze this on our 4-hour time frame. So we're gonna go in for a sell here because I'm not too sure if prices are gonna be able to push past this literal historical high level here. Yeah, you can let me know what you think if it'll continue pushing upwards. For now, you can see prices are bouncing off that level. They are reversing downwards. So that's the stance that I'm going to go with. Okay, and then my second support will just be here. So my 38 and the 61 line up. Mm, okay, 78 lines up nicely. Let's see. 61. No, hers is broken out of that level, so we'll just keep the 78. Or actually, if you want to go in for a buy, if you think that it's going to continue upwards, I'll just give you some options of where you can place your take profit. You can place it here, okay, in line with that 100%. You can also, not sure if we have a Nike tick here. Okay, no. Prices have broken out of the 161, so we can't use this anymore. Um, oh, actually, you can also use these levels as reference. Okay, but for now, it does look like it's moving downwards. Okay, so you can go in. I'm not so sure if it's gonna reverse off the first support. Okay, let's take a look at our indicators here. Okay, it's currently moving into the cloud, so it's transitioning. Suggests that it's a bearish, moving into a bearish trend. But I'm not gonna look at that for now. I don't use Ichimoku unless it gives us a very distinct signal. So if it's transitioning, we don't take that into account. We only look at it if it's moving above or below. Okay. MACD, you can see, is giving us a bearish signal. And Bollinger Bands, I think it's moving downwards as well. Yeah, still moving downwards. RSI, you can see moving in this descending trend line. Okay, so it's giving us quite a strong um, bearish trend. I think stochastic as well. Yeah. And then you can see on our stochastic, once again, it is moving into the oversold regions. So, which suggests that we might see a little bit of a bounce up of the first support. But similar to before, I still think that looking at our indicators and the Fibonacci levels, that there should be enough downward pressure to push it downwards past that first support. Okay, because if you look at the first support, there's only one swing low and one retracement that line up here. So there isn't really a very big confluence area here. But yeah, I just want to highlight that. So similar to before, make sure that there's enough room and you don't get stopped out. Okay. Okay, but here I'm expecting prices to continue to drop. Okay, you can let me know if you think that prices are going to continue pushing upwards by the end of the week, or you agree that it's going to continue to drop. Okay, other than that, I think that's all the requests we had. Any other requests from you guys? Sure, we can look at ETH. Okay, on our weekly time frame, it's pretty bullish. Daily time frame, not so much. In 4 hours. Okay, so for my first support, first resistance, and second support, maybe here. Okay, now retracement levels. I'm going to keep the 23 and the 38. Okay, I'm going to take it from the highest point here. The 50% lines up. And then let's see if we have a Fibonacci extension here. Okay, nope. The 161 lines up nicely with the first support, but you can see price already broke out of it, so we can't use that anymore. Okay, 78 lines up with our first resistance, so I'll keep that. I think that's all the levels we have. Okay, so for this chart, you can see that the overall trend is still pretty bullish, like we saw in the weekly time frame, it was still bullish. But it's currently reversing a bit. So let's see from our indicators if prices are going to continue downwards or push upwards. Okay, MACD giving us a bearish signal. Ichimoku is giving us a bullish signal. Okay, I'm gonna keep both for now. Bollinger Bands, they're not really telling us much here. Yeah, Bollinger Band's not really telling us much. And you can see that it's a mix, so price is still moving above the SAR, but it's moving below. I mean, it recently crossed below the EME and SME. Okay, so you can tell from this that it's the trend isn't very clear yet. RSI and stochastic aren't telling us much either. You can see the overall trend is still bearish. Okay, and they haven't moved into oversold or overbought regions. Okay, so I think that price is going to rebound off of our first support because there isn't a very clear downward momentum. Okay, looking at the indicators, looking at our charts. So I think there might be a bit of a bounce up towards our first resistance. To be safe, you can wait for prices to bounce off the first support before going in for a buy, since the overall trend hasn't really been established. But yeah, that's what I think. Okay, let me know what you guys think in the chat. You think it's gonna continue in this uptrend, or do you think it's gonna push downwards? I'm not too concerned about this recent move over here, this downward move, because you can see that our Fibonacci levels line up here. And price also tested this area a bunch of times quite recently. So we're seeing price reverse off that level again, and it's not that surprising. It doesn't really tell us much about the overall trend. Okay, so I do think it's gonna continue upwards. But yeah, you can wait for price to fully bounce off the first support just for extra confirmation towards your first resistance. Okay, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you guys found this session helpful. See if my camera works. Okay, great. So I'll see you guys again next week. Have a great weekend. And yeah, thanks so much for joining me. Bye everyone.